He is a hip hop and spoken word artist, as well as a poet from Los Angeles, California. Propaganda joins me now.
Hey.
Thanks so much for joining me.
My honor and pleasure.
One of the things I so appreciate about you is you have a passion to speak about real life issues. Where did that passion to have that voice come from?
I don't know, man. I think it probably came from a couple places. My father was a part of the American Black Panther Party, so I grew up in a sort of a house that already, you know, understood that the world was bigger than just, you know, our four people in our home, you know. So it was baked into the way that I saw the world. But I think some of it's out of necessity, you know, or just there's no way to not, especially talking about issues of racism. I mean, if you're on the bottom of it, there's no way to not talk about it. You know what I mean? Because it's the life we live, you know. So I would have had to have really gone out of my way to avoid real issues, you know, and just not be true to myself than to choose to step into it.
Well, you mentioned racism, and you experienced that growing up, both in the Latino neighborhood you grew up, later into a Caucasian neighborhood.
Yeah.
Tell me about how that's impacted you in the art you're now producing.
I think it made me be able to really just like how C.S. Lewis talks about, like, when you read, you see the world with 1,000 set of eyes while still having your own, you know? So I think that, like, that experience made me be able to, like, put myself in other people's shoes so much quicker and just understand just the diversity of experiences that people might have, and be able to articulate stories that may not necessarily be my own experience, but the experience of my neighbors, you know? The other is not hard for me, you know? So I think that really, like, a lot of my experience built that sort of empathy and connection with groups that you know, maybe don't necessarily share my same intersections. So I think ultimately it just, I speak as musically, which reflects the life that I live of that's immediately trying to put myself in someone else's shoes and articulate a story that's a human story that should spur compassion, empathy, and justice. You know, so I try to live that way, so it just shows up in my music. You know?
I like what you say about the other, because I think a lot of people have a narrative in them where they may feel like I'm the other because I am a fat person in the room of skinny people. I am a black person in a room of white people. I am a woman in a room of men. We all have a narrative why we feel like I don't fit. How do you talk to people who, you know, sometimes that narrative is more real than anything that happens to you, even if you are in a room of acceptance?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much to say about, like, whether we get super academic and just kind of talk about intersectionality and how, like, our identities overlap and, you know, power. And then we talk about, like you said, stories you believe for yourself that somehow or another you told yourself this is the reality, you know what I mean? And then the other part is to say, okay, like, maybe it's about celebrating your otherness, you know? Maybe it's about not seeking sameness, but oneness, and there's a difference, you know? And unity, not uniformity, you know? So if I can sort of encourage a person to say, no, that's what's awesome about you, is that you're the only one in here, you know what I mean? Then I think that, again, that tells a different story, a different narrative, that your uniqueness is necessary for the room, you know, and proverbially and, like, literally.
You're talking a lot about the life of Jesus and what he modeled for us, and trying to emulate that as people of faith. Tell me how faith is playing a role in your life these days. What is God doing? Yeah,
I think that there's a lot of sort of reframing, kind of reconstructing, like, really, I feel like I could speak freely in Canada, you know? There's a lot of things that, you know, American churches have almost convoluted as gospel and American, and almost see them as, like, simultaneous. And at some point you have to untangle that and say, no, that's just American. That's not Christian. It's American, you know, and willing to untangle those things and say, okay, what message am I putting forward? And even in the things that I feel to take on. Like, let me perpetuate a story that says, again, my Malaysian brothers and sisters are my brothers and sisters, you know, and include them in the narratives that I'm talking, include them in the faith that I say I profess, and understand that I exist not in an empire or a country, but I exist in a kingdom, you know? And if I exist in a kingdom, and I believe a kingdom that has no geographical borders,
yeah,
you know? And if that's, what God's been doing with me is like trying to get my head and my mind and my body into that, and understand like this is where you live, really, right?
yeah.
Or this is where you're from. You just exist here, you know?
Taking our countries and not totally our culture, but just the way that we think from where we come from out of our faith.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, some of it's unavoidable. I can't help but see the world from my eyes. I make no apologies for being American. I mean, I can't help where I was born, you know?
I love how deeply you think about things, and I think your voice really matters. And so I'm really glad you came to share just a tiny little bit of it with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.